If you take anything away from this podcast, you should take away the importance of making sure that your team has each other's back, who's accountable and supportive. That type of team is going to be high performing.
Today I talked to Kate French. She is a global product marketing leader. Kate has nearly 15 years in product management, product leadership, managing teams, and global product marketing.
You're given a dog sled and a bunch of cats, and you're told by marketing, go race the Iditarod, figure it out. And you have to convince these cats who don't report to you.
Today, we take a look at working with engineering on your product launches. What would have been the impact on the launch?
Probably 6 to 12 months, which in med device years is lifetimes. And when you think about the fact that we needed to get this product launched under the MDD directive still, you couldn't risk that timeline slip.
Let's get going. So why don't we start off with, how did you get into marketing? How did you get into life sciences?
Absolutely. So I really have to start by giving you the background about my family, because that's really what led to this. My dad is an internal medicine physician, and my mother was a nurse, and he actually met her as he was rounding on patients in the ICU at St. Joe's. Heard her complain to her friend that she hadn't gotten a Valentine that year, and that box of chocolates that he ended up buying her is still in our freezer.
Oh, wow.
But as a result, yeah, I know, it's a cute story. As a result, medicine was constantly discussed growing up, whether we were at the dinner table or on drives up to the lake, which is where I am right now, same lake house. It was just ever present. And so I knew I wanted to do something involving medicine. But I could also tell that I wasn't really interested in the one-on-one patient care. I wanted to have a broader impact in a different way. And I loved engineering. I was a nerd in high school, loved calculus. And so I figured and positioned myself toward doing something that was going to drive biotech strategy. So if the me from high school met me today, me would be really proud and excited and thrilled, because, there was a journey of contract manufacturing with project management involved, and then program management at medical device. And program management it's kind of a thankless role. You're given a dog sled and a bunch of cats, and you're told by marketing and R&D, go race the Iditarod, figure it out. And you have to convince these cats who don't report to you to do what you say in the path that you suggest based on your experience. And sometimes they listen, and sometimes they don't. And then you have to report out on the progress. And I did that for a couple years, and I realized that marketing is kind of a step up and a step backward in the stream of strategy. And so marketing is the one that's calling the shots and picking the races. And so they could say the Iditarod, or they could say the Tour de France. And so, made friends with the director of marketing, took her out for coffee, and just, hey, if there's ever an opportunity, I would be really interested. What should I do to get involved with marketing? And she had mentioned, that they'd be probably someday looking for somebody with an interest in or a background in finance. And I'd happened to intern at a financial institution while I was at school. So I kind of posited that, and sure enough, about 6 months later, her husband actually suggested, when she had a role open, he's like, maybe you should talk to that runner, the one that she's really good at finance and Excel. You should talk to her. I bet she'd be interested. And I took the role, and I loved it. And now I'm in my second marketing role after that one, and I'm flourishing. I'm very happy here.
I love that story. So you don't come necessarily from a traditional marketing background. Your background is more on the engineering, project management, product management side of things.
Absolutely. I certainly took some marketing classes during my, my hybrid degree of business and engineering, but they were very few and far between. It's really more of a on-the-job learning of marketing.
I think that's great. That's great. So you talked, you mentioned briefly, it's like herding cats. Talk about that a little bit. You get into that. Who are the cats, and what were some of the things you saw there?
Certainly. So as a med device program manager working on new product development, you have research and development groups, engineers working on a project, perhaps lead engineers as well. You've got quality assurance, regulatory affairs, compliance, validation, packaging. If there's something involved with the med device, there's probably somebody in charge of that, and they all don't report to you, but they work on the project.
And so your role in that specifically was try to encourage them to meet their deadlines. Can you expand on that a bit?
Yes, and it's a combination of things. So first, it's predicting what the project is going to look like, and consider the risks that it could occur. And with the PMP certification, they certainly give you a lot of advice on how to do that, but it seems to never translate into reality. You can't always predict what's going to go wrong. You try. And then it's communicating that predicted schedule to management. And then typically, management will come back with, well, we need it sooner and cheaper and better. And if you know the cost, scope, quality triangle, they're wanting all three of those, but usually you can only have two. And speed, right? So I think it's cost, scope, and speed.
Mm-hmm.
So usually it was balancing that, and then dealing with the cognitive dissonance of management of having like this unrealistic expectation to begin with, and then also convincing the engineers to then try to hit that unattainable milestone. But in the case that it was a schedule that was well planned and well adopted, it was then, yes, helping the engineers prioritize the right thing at the right time, have them trust me that, oh, while they really love working on this very specific thing that's like really meaningful to them, that doesn't really need to happen until after these four other things occur that are more critical to the timeline and the path and the execution of the program.
Right. And was there so there was a deadline. Was this a launch? Was this an update? Give me a little bit of context
Yes.
for.
Yeah. So let's say that we were manufacturing bicycles and we were bringing a new version of that bicycle to market. And there was a lot of work to validate and verify that the bicycle met the requirements, and we were planning to launch it in Europe.
And so you had some deadlines, and in life sciences, we've got to deal with regulatory quite a bit. So talk to me a little bit about what you were facing as far as restrictions or deadlines for this launch.
Yes, absolutely. So there are a couple things. So first, anybody that's in the med device industry right now that's trying to launch a product in Europe will know about EU MDR. And this had been back when MDR was just first being discussed. And so you could still launch a product under MDD if you were quick and careful. And our regulatory team, very conservative, very focused on compliance and ensuring that we follow the regs, really wanted us to launch under MDR. And the concern there that I had was that, that's reliant on an external body as part of the timeline.
Maybe people aren't as familiar with MDR and MDD. Can you just tell me what each of those are and why they're important?
Yes. So MDD, Medical Device Directive, was the set of regulations that medical devices have been governed in the EU for many years. I don't quite know the timeline. And MDR is the updated Medical Device Regulation, I think. MDR is the updated version of those regulations, much more strict. And it was a method of really increasing the compliance and quality regulation for devices launched in Europe, as well as post-market surveillance. And so a lot of companies are going through the process right now of uplift, which is where they're taking their existing device, their existing bicycle, and verifying that it meets all of these new stringent requirements of MDR so that they can continue selling. Mm-hmm. And initially, there was a timeline, a deadline that you needed to have submitted your MDR by I think it was like May 2024. And as long as you had submitted, then you could continue selling under MDD for another period of years. But the notified bodies were having trouble keeping up with the applications. And I think part of this might have been also related to COVID. And so, you were relying on these timelines of, oh, well, the notified body will review it in this amount of time, and then we will hopefully be approved. Or if we have an audit, we perhaps have to respond to these questions, and then we will be approved. But if you can't control the timeline of the notified body, you're kind of stuck. And so, one of the lessons learned that I had from this launch was really, where possible, don't tie your fate to MDR. If you have the ability to launch under MDD, do that, and then in parallel, continue with your MDR submission to be compliant.
So in your case, were you able to just simply launch under MDD, or was it a little bit more complicated than that?
So I worked on a few different projects around the same time, because at any given time we have like 8 balls in the air, or 8 bicycles in the air. And so one of the bicycles we were able to launch under MDD, and the other was stuck waiting for MDR.
Okay, so can you talk a little bit about what contributed to that, or maybe what the variables look like, and why one and why not the other?
Yeah. So one of the bicycles was one that we were bringing back to market, and it was treated more as like an extension of an existing bicycle line.
Mm-hmm.
And the other was treated as a brand new product. And so the line extension was able to fall under the existing certificate.
Okay. So was that an internal decision, or was that categorized externally?
I think that it was an internal strategy that was then presented to the notified body, and then the notified body supported that strategy.
With a product that you were able to launch under MDD, was that a simple process, or did you face any obstacles internally to do that?
It definitely required some planned nonconformances to our quality plan SOP. Mm-hmm. But they were documented in the quality plan and pre-approved by management. And, as long as we followed the plan and had an implementation plan for getting to MDR, we were okay with that bicycle.
So internally, you're back to managing cats. You have a lot of voices and people and opinions in the room. Were there any internal processes or people that created obstacles for moving on this timeline?
Yes, there was one in particular, and again, I have to be careful in how I talk about it, but we had a packaging engineer who, I swear, if he had been given the opportunity to ship the product in a concrete box, like literally pour the concrete in and then chip it away later, he would have been happy with that, because you would know that the product arrived in an integral
That's tough
manner.
With bicycles.
Can you imagine shipping a bicycle in a concrete box? Anyway, so there had just been this release of ISO 11607, like 2021. And he wanted us to immediately adopt that version of the standard, and was very passionate about it, knowing that it would then make us compliant when that standard became harmonized. But our understanding was that the standard that was in the harmonized version for the EU and MDD was ISO 11607 2017. And, if we had adopted this new version of the standard, it was going to probably require us to repeat all of our ship testing, which is, we call it shake, rattle, and roll, where you put the package through, the Ace Ventura version of delivering the vase to the man where he's getting the dog back. And it's, you just want to make sure that the product stays, functional and works and meets all of the performance requirements. And so we were not ready to redo or take on that additional timeline risk. Now, of course, if this had proven any type of risk to patient safety, or if this was a requirement that was due at the time that we were launching, obviously we would have made the call to test it appropriately. But this was a predicted future requirement. It was not a now requirement. And so the compromise that we made was that we would proceed with the product requirements under the existing standard and drive to that, but then also have a project that did the gap assessment and the analysis to bring us to compliance when that standard was due. And that's how we ended up managing that.
I love that story a lot. And I mean, was it easy? Were you just able to talk to the engineer and say, hey, pump the brakes on this. We get that you're excited, but this is going to have a little bit of an impact on our calendar. I mean, what would have been the impact on the launch if you had?
It would have been probably 6 to 12 months, which in
Oh,
med device years is lifetimes. And when you think about the fact that we needed to get this product launched under the MDD directive still, you couldn't risk that timeline slip. Furthermore, we had this is not a bicycle that we were selling. This was a life-saving medical device. And so the longer that it wasn't on the market, the fewer patients were being saved for this illness. And so we felt obligated to get it launched. But so to convince the engineer and the team, it was really about first agreeing and saying, I agree with you 100%. This is an important standard. This is an important test. It's absolutely a priority for us. And I think we should still launch now and then make it a priority in parallel. And so, winning friends and influencing people, don't tell them that they're wrong. Tell them that they're right. You just need to adjust the path a little bit.
yeah, I love that. So what you're saying is you were just friendly. You're just really nice about it and said,
Yeah.
yes, we should do that, but also no. Or how were you able? I mean, scientists, engineers, anybody really with a deep technical background, they can sometimes be difficult to persuade with maybe an emotional argument.
Oh, absolutely. I would say that is very true. It is one of the reasons that it is difficult to be a program manager. You tend to have to listen to all of their objections, be friendly, be empathetic to the stress that they may be feeling about the potential switch cost of not getting their way, and then lead with data. Really, well, here are the actual regulations. This is what's required now. This is the requirement that we all signed up for. This is the impact that you're going to have, or that we're going to have. Really, you never say you say we, because we're on the same team. We're all in the boat together. This is the impact that we will have as a result of not delivering this now. And that is really, it's a difficult conversation to walk. It does require a lot of empathy.
Yeah, I agree, and we see that a lot. I mean, it's not just data, it's not just empathy. It's a blend. Was there anything else, looking at the data, maybe that you use to support the argument?
Otherwise it was PowerPoint slides that really just convey, I would say 90% of my job was making PowerPoint slides and showing them to people and having them adjust them slightly and then having them agree. And so it was, having the team meeting, discussing it, escalating it further, kind of looping in the engineer's boss as well, but presenting it more as a team recommendation with the identified risks. But usually you need to be able to tell the story in a way that management is going to understand. And so the way that we most effectively do that is visually through PowerPoint.
That makes sense. Is there anything, looking back on it, if you could time travel and go to you who was in that situation or going into that situation back then, is there anything that you would say to you, any recommendations you would make, and say, just to maybe make the process a little bit easier?
I think part of it is really ensuring that conversations and decisions get documented really well, and that you follow up breadcrumb like via email, so that you can say, hey, it was really great to meet with you today one-on-one about this discussion. These were my takeaways, and this is the result that's going to come from that. Because I think sometimes there can be some cognitive dissonance from the engineers or from management, where they only remember the parts that are good for their group and their mission. And so just having a really good documented, correspondence and decision record for especially things like that, where when you come back 6 months later, well, why didn't we immediately adopt this standard? Oh, well, here is why. These are the reasons. And I have a really good memory. I have like a photographic memory. And so I was able to certainly recite all of that information just fine. But, that's my mind. People won't believe that as much as my written notes at the time.
Yeah, I think not everybody has a photographic memory. I certainly have one of the worst memories ever. So, for me, I also find that kind of summarizing the key takeaways, especially where we know they'll potentially impact kind of your critical path. And that maybe not everybody was completely on board with them. So making sure that you're able to point back to them and say, we talked
Mhm.
about this and we collectively agreed on this. And it's, I find that it helps smooth, but it also helps accelerate timing because you're not wasting time rehashing problems or re-investigating or researching those things. You still have to do a little bit of work to remind people sometimes, but it
Certainly.
can definitely smooth things over. So I love that too. And I think quickly, if you had one highlight, one aspect of that entire piece that you're really proud of and really happy
Yeah.
with the way it went, what would that be?
I think back to that bicycle, that the one with the MDD and the timeline and the really tight deadlines and the pressure that the team was under. And I feel really thankful for those people that I got to work with. We were working very long hours and we were identifying strategies constantly to try to keep morale up and keep people motivated and focused. And one thing that I did was Friday morning dance off. This is back when we were always in the office.
I
And
remember that.
literally, it was so silly. We would do a different dance every week as just a way to, have some fun. And I'm really proud of, just that sense of morale and camaraderie and just the team. I think if you take anything away from this podcast, you should take away the importance of making sure that your team feels like a team that has each other's back, who's accountable and supportive, that we care about each other, because that type of team is going to be high performing, and they're always going to be the ones that I can count on.
Thank you for sharing that. Thanks again, Kate. It's really great talking to you, and we'll have to catch up again soon.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. Have
All
a
right.
good one.
You too. Bye. So if you're a life science leader or product manager and you have an interesting story you'd like to share, reach out to me on LinkedIn and we'll connect. If you're interested in learning some other lessons in marketing for life sciences or in avoiding some of the big mistakes, I cover a lot of that in my LinkedIn newsletter. So I'll drop the links to those in the description below. That's it. That's the end.